Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to this workshop, EV Charging Basics. We are glad that you are here to learn all about charging your electric vehicle, both at home and on the road. Since it's 7:03, we're going to get started as some of our stragglers can catch up with us when they enter. So what I thought I would do first is to quickly review best practices on Zoom. I do want to let you know that this presentation is being recorded, and we will send you a copy of the recording next week. All attendees' microphones are turned off to ensure that everyone can hear the presenters. And so we do ask that you keep your microphones off until the end of the presentation when we will be taking questions. You can keep your camera on or off, and feel free to ask written questions throughout the presentation by using the chat feature. And we will answer those at the end of the presentation. So let us first introduce Actera, who is the presenter this evening. Actera is a very long-standing environmental organization that was founded back in 1970. We're based in Palo Alto. Our mission is to bring people together to create local solutions for a healthy planet. And currently, we are laser focused on addressing climate change with a high priority on equity. And you can see here, this is a picture of our staff. We like to have fun while we do good work. And I also want to introduce to you Carl Knapp, after whom our program is named. Carl Knapp was a Stanford professor, a renewable energy expert, an EV advocate, and an all-around Earth champion. And we are very proud to name our program after him. So the Carl Knapp Go EV program does a lot of work in the community. We have a large group of EV ambassadors who help us educate and guide and encourage future EV adopters. We offer one-on-one consultations to individuals who aspire to become EV owners. We do a lot of work with EV advocacy, which we'll talk about momentarily. And we do events such as this event tonight. So I now would like to introduce and thank tonight's presenting sponsors, the City of Palo Alto Utilities and the City of Sunnyvale. I also want to thank Willow, Glen Electric and EV Experts. Their CEO, Matt Londre, is going to be our featured speaker this evening, and we are so thankful to have him provide his expertise in a very easy to understand way. He's an excellent communicator, and I think you'll learn a lot from him tonight. Finally, I want to thank our outreach partner, the Sunnyvale Public Library. So, before we delve into the specifics of EV charging, I'd like to introduce representatives from Palo Alto and Sunnyvale so that they can share timely information about their EV programming. First, I'd like to introduce Environmental Programs Specialist Shannon Keener from the City of Sunnyvale. Shannon?
Yeah, perfect. Thank you, Ariane. Hello, everyone. Thank you all for joining us. So like Ariane said, my name is Shannon Keener, and I'm an Environmental Program Specialist with the City of Sunnyvale. Tonight, we will hear about ways that you can optimize your EV charging experience. In Sunnyvale, our target is to have 20% of all vehicles on the road be zero emission by 2030, and then increase that to 75% by 2050. And in order to get there, we hope this talk and other information shared through our Sunnyvale Drive Electric program can guide you in making the switch to an EV. We'll go to the next slide. Thank you. We would also like to invite everyone to another Sunnyvale Drive Electric event. On Saturday, June 18th, we will be hosting an EV ride and drive at Baylands Park. This will be an in-person event from 11 o'clock to 3 o'clock, where you can take a variety of EVs for a test drive around the block. To reserve a test drive time slot, please RSVP at the link that I'll drop in the chat momentarily. And we'll go to the next slide. Great, so the last thing that I wanted to introduce everyone to is SVCE's Grid Shift app. This is a smart charging app that any SVCE customer can download and then most effectively charge your car. To do so, you download the app, create an account, authorize your connection to PG&E, and make sure that your EV is eligible, and then you're in. With this advanced app, you set your Be Ready By time and plug in to charge. The app starts and pauses charging so that you're using energy only while it's at its lowest cost during off-peak times and while there is less carbon in the system. You can also track your carbon consumption and money spent over time. With the Grid Shift app, you can let technology do the work for you and get the cleanest charge. Thank you, Ariane. I'll pass it back over to you.
Super. Thank you, Shannon. So now whoopsies, let me go back here. Now I'd like to introduce Utilities Program Manager Hiromi Kelty with the City of Palo Alto Utilities, who will inform us about the city's programs that support charging infrastructure and electric vehicle adoption. Hiromi. Oh, and Hiromi, can you unmute? There you go.
Right, I am unmuted. Thank you, Ariane, and thank you everyone for being here tonight. This is so exciting that there's so much interest in EVs. In Palo Alto, transportation accounts for roughly 2/3 of our greenhouse gas emissions. And to reach our city's goal of 80% emissions reduction by 2030, drastic changes need to be made in the transportation sector along all possible avenues. Travel by personal vehicles must be significantly reduced, and remaining vehicle travel must be electrified to the greatest extent possible. With community buy-in and societal trends such as telework, we can reduce transportation emissions, but to do so will require the following. In Palo Alto, our goals are very aggressive, and by 2030, we want to see 85% of new vehicle sales be EVs and 44% of all vehicles registered in Palo Alto to be EVs. Vehicle miles traveled needs to be reduced overall, and the driving needs to become EVs, not just by residents, but also by commuters and visitors. This is a regional, statewide, planet-wide effort. We also need to see a lot more EV charging ports installed in our city. And for those that need to drive a gas car, we need to hope that the efficiency of conventional vehicles will increase. Next slide, please. So in Palo Alto, at the end of 2021, we're pretty excited because 10% of vehicles registered in Palo Alto were EVs. That's double digits. So we're doing great, but we need to reduce this gap between single family residents and those that live in multifamily. And I'll talk about that in the next slide. So to reach our carbon reduction goals, as you saw earlier, there needs to be a lot more infrastructure. And these are a list of EV programs we've been able to launch so far. And the batteries represent the programs which facilitate the installation of EV charging infrastructure. The big battery represents the key target customer segment for the program. And a lot of the programs are designed to benefit renters or multifamily residents. And we're hoping that the charging ports that are installed will also benefit commuters and visitors. So we have a EV charging rebate program specifically designed to serve multifamily and nonprofits, including schools. So if you or anyone you know lives in a multifamily property in Palo Alto, we're offering rebates for EV charger installations up to $8,000 a port. Also, if you know a place of worship, school, or other nonprofit that may want to get EV chargers, please tell them that Palo Alto has generous rebates and free technical assistance. We're also piloting a curbside EV charging program. The intent of this is to install publicly available curbside chargers at 10 pilot sites with electricity supplied by resident homes. The resident would pay for the electricity, but in exchange, they could get a generous rebate for the charger. The city has also installed 120 city-owned charging ports available to the public, where residents can also charge their EVs overnight. We've also partnered with Tesla to install 19 more superchargers at one of our city garages. And raising awareness is a top priority for us, and we'll be hosting many more workshops like this one throughout the year. And some of the topics coming up are EV financial incentives clinics and a lot more neighborhood EV expos with Actera and wonderful Ariane. And we're also planning for webinars on just e-bikes, and I'm excited for this one, on bi-directional charging, which will be something coming up in the near future. Palo Alto also helps fund the Clean Fuel Rewards, which is a state-run point-of-sale rebate for new EVs. All residents in the state of California are eligible for the $750 rebate at local dealerships. And lastly, we have Cali VIP, which is for our commercial customers. And hopefully that'll result in about 100 more new charging ports, level 2 charging ports, and 12 to 14 new DC fast chargers. And if you have any questions about Palo Alto programs, please reach out to us. Our number is right there and our email address is written. So please reach out to us. Thank you. Back to you, Ariane.
Thank you, Hiromi. All right. So now I would like to introduce tonight's featured speaker. Matt Londre is the president of Willow Glen Electric and founder of EV Experts. Willow Glen Electric's division focused on EV charging and home electrification. He was born and raised in San Jose and graduated from Cal Poly San Luis Obispo with a degree in business management. He joined the family business full-time in 2010, spent years in the field as an electrician, and has helped grow the company to over 20 employees. Matt and Willow Glen Electric are thrilled to be on the leading edge of contractors in the United States, providing home electrification services, having installed over 5,000 home EV chargers in the greater Silicon Valley Bay Area. Willow Glen Electric was recently acquired by Qmerit to help share their expertise on home EV charging with contractors across the country. Qmerit is North America's leading provider of installation services for EV charging, home energy storage, and other electrification technologies. So Matt is very qualified to be giving this talk tonight. And with that introduction, I will let Matt take it from here.
Hey, thank you so much for the nice introduction, Ariane. Not only do I install EV chargers, but I drive an electric vehicle myself. We drove our first Fiat 500e back in 2014 for a couple of years. In early 2017, I got my Tesla Model 3. And I know we're trying to limit the number of miles driven, but I'm up to close to 100,000 miles driven on there with all of my driving to work sites and everything around the Bay Area. So I've got a lot of experience driving electric vehicles, and I'm a big proponent of that. So this right here is a map of kind of the heart of our installation location. We've installed chargers stretching from Hollister to San Francisco out to Danville, Livermore, over to the coast of Santa Cruz and Capitola. But kind of the greater Silicon Valley right in here, San Jose to Palo Alto, is really the heart of our installation location. You know, Sunnyvale and Palo Alto in there. And every dot right there is an installation location we've done. Ariane was correct that we got acquired by Qmerit last year. That was pretty exciting. We're the second company they purchased nationwide to help kind of advance their expertise in home electric vehicle charging. And Qmerit is the recommended charger provider for pretty much every non-Tesla OEM. As you can see on this board, they're the recommended charger installation for Volvo, Ford, Lucid, Mercedes, Rivian, Audi, Volkswagen, Chevy, Jaguar. It goes on and on. That they just closed with Toyota, and it's pretty exciting. So when somebody buys a a Lucid. We've actually installed a bunch of Lucid chargers, Rivian chargers, a lot of really fun kind of cutting edge charging equipment. So it's a great place to be. Next page. So what are the benefits of electric vehicle driving? I assume most of the people know this here, but there's gonna be a few people out there that are new to the electric vehicle world. So here are 5 of the huge benefits of EVs. First off, you have a very enjoyable driving experience. It's quiet, there's instant torque, it's convenient, it's safe. Driving electric is fantastic. There's significantly lower maintenance. You know, I've had my car, I'm close to 100,000 miles on the Model 3, and I've never had to change the oil because there is no oil in the car. I've changed my tires twice, and I've squirted some WD-40 in the handles of my car a few times. And I've put a bunch of wiper fluid in there. And that's really about it for maintenance for this. There's 0 emissions when fueled from renewable energy sources, obviously. And the city of Palo Alto utilities can provide clean power without installing solar at home, and Silicon Valley Power through PG&E has some clean power as well. And then there's also significantly lower fuel costs. Now it does depend on when and how you charge, but almost anywhere, even like the most expensive EV charging typically will be less expensive than the cheapest gas you can get these days, especially now that gas is, gosh, I saw a picture of a station charging $7+ for gas earlier today. And the last benefit, which sadly I no longer have on my car since I've had it for so long, but it's still a great car, is HOV lane access. So you can save time if you've got a big commute. Next page. So looking at the EV fuel costs, EV mileage is typically about 3 miles of driving range per kilowatt hour of energy. And kind of if you're thinking about electric vehicles, and the kilowatt hour is like the gallon of gas, how many gallons you can store of electricity in your car. My Model 3 has about 75 kilowatt hours of energy in there, so call it 75 gallons, if you will. And that car gets a little over 4 miles per kilowatt hour. Some of the least efficient electric vehicles today, the Rivian, the Ford, are still, they're getting about 2+ miles of energy per kilowatt hour of energy, which is still significantly more efficient than the gasoline equivalency. The least efficient electric vehicle is vastly more efficient than even a Prius from a couple of years ago. So looking at how much these will cost to charge per mile, electric vehicles are down to 3 to 10 cents per kilowatt hour if you're charging at home. And if you're charging in public, you're looking at paying 10 to 30 cents per mile. While a gas car, you can see one getting 25 miles per gallon at $6 per gallon is going to cost you 24 cents a mile, not including maintenance for the car. So charging at home is way cheaper than paying for gas. Next slide. EV mileage is affected by the temperature outside. And if you're using your car's heater, it does use a lot of energy in there. So if there's no heat and no cooling in your car, if it's a very moderate day, that's the day you're going to get the best efficiency. Speed greatly affects the efficiency of your vehicle. Highway mileage actually is worse for electric vehicles than gas cars. In a gas car, you get greater efficiency on the freeway compared to street driving, but electric vehicles will give you worse efficiency on the highway. Aerodynamics is huge. That's why on this little picture of the Lucid vehicle, you can see the wind blowing over it. I believe the Lucid is one of the most efficient, if not the most aerodynamic cars on the market. So aerodynamics is huge. It's actually one of the reasons why the Tesla Cybertruck looks so darn ugly in the best way possible, because they wanted to create a teardrop type shape to cut down on drag. And the last biggest issue with fuel costs is your lead foot. Electric vehicles are insanely fun to drive. So if you're stepping on the gas everywhere, or stepping on the electricity pedal, I should say, you're going to use a lot of electricity. But you'll see after a while of driving, it's almost more fun for me to try to get the lowest energy usage possible in my vehicle, even though I can drive pretty fast. It's fun to see how low I can get the efficiency. Next page. So I saw somebody asking a question about what is a level 2 charger. So before I get to level 2, we'll talk about the level 1 charger. And I know different jurisdictions, different places will have slightly different definitions for this, but the most common definition that I found between level 1, level 2, level 3, level 1 is a 120-volt charger at your house. And that would make use of a receptacle in your house. It's kind of like the one you see over there that says 120 volts underneath that. That's your standard 120-volt 15-amp receptacle. And that will provide, if you're charging full speed out of there with your level 1 charger, that'll provide about 1.4 kilowatt hours of energy per hour of charge. That is the pretty much slowest method you could possibly charge. You're only going to get about 2 to 5 miles of driving range per hour of charge, which does not sound like a lot. And if you're coming from the gas world, if you thought about pouring, like a cup of gasoline into your car every hour, that would be just horrifically painful to do. But when you just plug the charger into your car at night, you go to sleep, you wake up hours later, and you've had 10 hours of charging on there, you'll get 20 to 50 miles of driving range on there, even with just a simple little 120 volt charger. Now, don't listen to this part of the conversation because that would mean that you don't need us to install an EV charger for you, but honestly, it will work for you. When I had my when I had my Model 3, originally, I actually was living in a little fourplex in San Jose. I did not have access to a fast level 2 charger, and I plugged into a level 1 charger every night. It was slow. It was mildly painful at times if I really had to drive, longer distances, but 90% of the time, it was more than enough for what I needed. So if you're kind of up in the air with whether you need a level 2 charger or not, try the 120 volt. That might be all you need. Next page. Level 2 is, in my opinion, any 240 volt charger. Some places will say that level 2 only goes up to 50 amps. I would say, and then a 100 amp charger, like a fastest home charge you possibly could have would be level 3. But in my mind, a level 2 is any 240 volt receptacle or any 240 volt hardwired charger. And that ranges from 15 amps all the way up to a 100 amp charger at your house. These level 2 chargers are typically going to be either hardwired or plugged in. That's a picture of the receptacle up there. That's a 240 volt 30 amp receptacle. We've installed tons of those for EV charging. That right there would give a Model X about 15 miles of driving range per hour of charge. I would give a Model 3 22 miles of driving range per hour of charge. And it's very similar to that one in particular is basically a dryer receptacle, but it also will work for EV charging. Now, some chargers can be combined. I'll skip that section for now. There's a little too much I'd want to say about that. Next page would be on level 3 charging. And don't worry, I'm sorry. Next page is talking about the kind of the equation of how much mileage you're going to get from a level 2 charger. So all of these are level 2. So you'll see that the circuit size amperage times 240 volts times an 80% safety factor will get you the calculated wattage of the charger. And if you divide that by 1,000, that gives you the kilowatts, 1,000 watts. So 2.8 kilowatts is 2,800 watts of power. That 240 volt level 2 15 amp circuit will give you 2.8 kilowatts or a driving range of 5 to 11 miles of driving range per hour of charge. That goes all the way up to a 60 amp charger at a house. A lot of chargers typically will top out around 60 amps, like the Tesla wall connector tops out at 60 amps. The ChargePoint Home Flex, which I had at my house, tops out at 60 amps. And they'll provide upwards of 11.5 kilowatt hours of energy per hour of charge, which is the equivalent of 22 to 44 miles of driving range per hour, which is amazingly fast. I know a lot of people have asked me what will happen when batteries in cars go up to 200 kilowatt hours of storage in there, which honestly, I kind of hope they don't, because that would be too big and too heavy. But even if it got to that large of a charger, where the 60 amp charger would take 24 plus hours to charge it, you very rarely would actually be charging that much. So that 60 amp circuit would be just amazingly helpful at a house. Next page. So that brings us to level 3 chargers. So I did mention earlier that I had a level 1 charger originally charging my Model 3. That was fantastic for 90+% of the time. For the remainder of that, the last 8 or 9% of charging, I would charge using the local Tesla superchargers, which would be considered a level 3 charger. Level 3 is pretty much, in my mind, any 480 volt fast, DC type charger. And this is the absolute fastest charging method that exists out there. The V3 Tesla superchargers will actually charge your car upwards of 1,000 plus. So our RPH is kind of my term for range per hour, mileage range per hour. So the fastest Tesla supercharger, if your battery is really low, will get 1,000 plus miles per hour briefly, and that could provide an 80% charge in your car in as little as 20 to 30 minutes. Some of the Electrify America stations are actually providing even more power for cars that can handle that. And yeah, level 3 charging is fantastic, but you will not get a level 3 charger at your house. I've had tons of customers ask for level 3 charging in the past, and we smile, we try not to laugh too much and say level 2 is about as good as you get at your house. Level 3 are amazingly powerful chargers. Next page. So level 3 chargers, here's 2 pictures of 2 of the more common level 3 stations that you'll find. The picture on the left is a public charging network from Electrify America. And the picture on the left is a picture of the Tesla supercharger station down in, I believe, Kettleman City. Charged there a bunch of times, drive down to LA. The V3 supercharger will provide upwards of 250 kilowatts of energy, and the Electrify America supercharger will provide upwards of 350 kilowatts of energy per hour of charge, which is the absolute fastest you could possibly charge a car these days. But there are lots of other networks as well with level 3. You've got ChargePoint, EVgo, countless other companies are coming to market. And I did see somebody ask about level 3 charging decreasing the battery life. That is true if that is exclusively the only charging that you do. I actually read a study a couple of years back talking about Tesla supercharger usage, comparing which Tesla vehicles had the most life left, because there is a little bit of battery degradation over time. And they compared Teslas that had been charged exclusively at level 2 chargers at people's houses, people that had charged exclusively at level 3 chargers, the level 3 Tesla superchargers, and people that actually had a mixture of charging at the level 2 and level 3. And the cars that had the most efficiency, like that had the least amount of battery degradation, surprisingly, were cars I think that would charge at level 3 superchargers every, maybe 5 to 10% of the time. So in my mind, it's almost like you're exercising the battery of your car. It's a good thing to do every once in a while, even if you never really needed to use a V3 supercharger. Do it sparingly, but definitely use the V3 supercharger and don't be afraid of battery degradation with that. Next page. So talking about the Electrify America supercharger of 350 kilowatt. I know sometimes you hear kilowatts and it's kind of a very vague phrase. You don't really understand what that truly means. So again, the kilowatts, 1,000 watts, so 350,000 watts of power you'd be pushing into your car. And that 350,000 watts of power is the equivalent of powering. Now I know no light bulb is actually using 60 watts anymore. Most light bulbs are actually using more like 10 watts or less. But back in the day, those old, very inefficient hot light bulbs that use 60 watts apiece, that 350 kilowatt charger could actually power 5,833 of those. And if you're using a more efficient LED light bulb, that'd be powering, oh gosh, multiply that by 6, you'd be powering 30,000 10-watt light bulbs to charge your car up. So there's an amazing amount of power. So for home charging, you do want to think about how many miles you're going to be driving per day to see if you truly do need EV charging to your house. And most of the time, honestly, a smaller level 2 charger would be enough. A level 1 charger could be enough, but a lot of people do want to make sure that they can drive longer distances. They want to be able to get back from a road trip, charge their car overnight, and immediately be able to leave for another road trip the next day. But if you did have a 30-mile daily round trip commute, paying about 24 cents per kilowatt hour through PG&E's EV rate would require about 10 kilowatt hours. That would only take about 6.5 hours of charging on the level 1 charger, or that would take that one more page, or about an hour and a half on a level 2 charger, and it would really only cost you about less than $2.50. That's a fraction of a gallon of gas these days. For a 200-mile road trip, though, you'd be using upwards of 67 kilowatt hours of energy for that. And that would take you 45 hours to charge on a level 1. That's kind of where people hear level 1 charging of 2 to 5 miles an hour and kind of freak out that 45 miles would never work for that, which is 100% true. That would really not work. But there are a lot of V3 superchargers or a lot of level 3 DC fast chargers in the area. So if you really wanted to, you could top off at a Electrify America, ChargePoint, Tesla supercharger, or something like that. But if you didn't have a level 2 charger at your house, that would be preferred because that actually gets you lower cost electricity. And it's extremely convenient. And that would take you less than 10 hours to charge your car overnight for only about 16 bucks. Next page. So installing a home level 2 EV charger, that is our bread and butter. We do that all day, every day for customers all around the Bay Area. The first thing that we will do for your house is to do an electrical load calculation to determine the safe charger speed for your house. So that takes into account the square footage of your home, the larger electrical appliances that you have in your house. And we use the National Electrical Code calculation. I've actually taught a lot of building jurisdictions in the area kind of how to do them more accurately. I helped Tesla years back get their load calculation working better because there is no like universally accepted load calculation. There's just kind of some recommended guidelines in the code. And we've got a pretty good load calculation for these to help determine the safest charging speed. Because we want to make sure that we're putting in the fastest charger possible, but we also don't want to burn your house down. Because like you saw with that 350 kilowatt charger. These use a ton of power. They generate a lot of heat. And if they're not installed properly in your house, bad things could happen. We've seen some chargers melt from poor installations from other companies. We've seen electrical panels melt from being overloaded, and we don't want that to happen to our customers. If only there was a 1% chance of it happening for our customers. With our 5,000 chargers that we've installed, that would be 50 really bad things happening, and we don't want that to happen. So we're making sure every installation is done properly, sized properly. So you do want to use an electrician to install wiring and conduit. I saw a YouTube video online once upon a time. If you type in NEMA 1450 on Google, the very first topic was a guy named, or the very first video was a guy named Tesla Tim, and he showed you how to install a NEMA 1450 at your house. And in his video, he proudly said, electricians don't drive Teslas, so they don't know how to put a Tesla charger in, but I drive a Tesla, so I know how to put an EV charger in. And he proceeded to show how to use 30 amp gauge wiring coming out of a 20 amp sub panel to install a 50 amp electric vehicle charger, cramming this box full of wire. And that was the recommended way to install a charger, like literally the first hit on Google. So please don't listen to what amateurs say. It's really important to use a licensed electrician for these installations. Not necessarily us. You don't have to use Willow Electric. There's a lot of other good contractors out there doing these, but please use a licensed contractor. And most importantly, at the very end, you do want to make sure that you're getting a city permit and inspection with these installations. There's a lot of electrical work you can do in your house that, now the cities don't want me to say this, but there's a lot of things you can do that really won't have too much of a bearing on your home safety in there. Even done poorly, there's some electrical work that not much will happen. It's true. Electric vehicle charging though, very bad things can happen if it's done improperly. Even if it's installed properly, bad things still can happen. So by having a city permit inspection, that makes sure that we can verify and that you can verify that most importantly, your insurance company can verify that at least at one point, your charger was installed properly with the right size wire, designed properly for your house, and that everything was done according to national electrical code and local building codes. So please, please, please get the city permit inspection. If you were to ask your dealer if you need a permit, they'll probably laugh and say no. If you talk to your friends who have driven electric vehicles for years, I'd say 50-50 chance they would say, of course, you don't need a permit for that, but you really, really do need permits for these. If you take one thing away, please remember, get a city permit. They're expensive, they're a pain in the butt to get, but if you're using a good licensed contractor who's done a lot of chargers, we can make it really easy for you. And yes, it is easy to find a qualified electrician that is savvy to install home charging equipment. Well, you've got one right here, Willow Electric, and reach out to us. We'd be happy to give you a good recommendation and estimate for your project. But you'd probably want to ask, is it a thing now to be a qualified electrician? Yeah, you'd probably want to ask them a couple of questions. Ask them if they're going to get a permit. Some contractors that claim to be professionals with electric vehicles will say, oh no, you don't need a permit. Let's say if the contractor says you don't need a permit for EV charging, that's pretty much all you need to hear from them. If they say yes, they will pull a permit, that's a pretty good sign that they hopefully will do the right thing out there. So as far as sizing charging speeds for home level 2 charging, this was a study I did last year for the last time I helped with this presentation. You could see we installed almost 70 plus amp circuits in houses. Back in the day, Teslas could handle a 70 plus amp circuit, but not too many recently. So it's gone to almost 0 installations recently. 50 and 60 amp circuits, that made up about 75% of our installations. Now that does not mean that all of those houses could actually handle a 50 or 60 amp circuit by themselves. A lot of those houses had to have infrastructure upgrades to handle that much speed, whether it was an automatic kind of load management device, whether it was upgrading the electrical panel, or doing some other completely code approved, safe ways to get fast charging in there. We've got ways to get fast charging in a lot of places these days, but you can see that, in, gosh, what is that? 10+% of the time, we would install a 30 amp circuit or less in a house, which doesn't give you the fastest home charging possible, but it gives you fantastic home charging. So some electricians say they won't work in Palo Alto because the process of getting a permit inspection is so cumbersome and time consuming. What do I say? I would 100% agree with them that the process, sorry, Hiromi, that the process is really time consuming and painful in Palo Alto. But again, it's something you have to do. It's something we deal with every electric vehicle charger that we do in Palo Alto and every jurisdiction. Some jurisdictions are easier than others, but it's kind of one of those necessary things to do. And I can answer a couple more of these questions. So I think that's just about it for now. Looked like some other questions were answered. Future heat pump water circuit or future heat pump water electric range if you don't already have it. Sunnyvale for permitting is pretty good. They're pretty good. We're working on a project right now in Sunnyvale. I was actually talking with the lady from Sunnyvale before the presentation started. And if you live in Sunnyvale, feel free to go into their building department tomorrow and say, please allow publicly visible EV chargers. Because right now, it's not a building issue, it's actually a planning issue. They want to have the EV chargers kind of hidden off to the side around the corners of the front of the house. And it takes a lot of begging and pleading to get a kind of a front-facing charger. So one of our customers in Sunnyvale wanted to have a pedestal mounted Tesla charger, and we finally got approval for that, but it wasn't the easiest thing with Sunnyvale. But overall, Sunnyvale's pretty good with that. They're good and competent over there. Residential EV chargers, yes, Romy, they are straightforward with Palo Alto. It just takes a long time right now. I'm getting the plans back. Kind of it's not just Palo Alto. They used to be fantastic. Walking in off the street to pull a permit, but with COVID, all building departments were thrown for a loop and kind of having to email plans in. Building departments are still adapting to doing things remotely. So they're doing their best over there, and we're making do. Okay, so back to level 2 charging. So there are many charging options available. There are lots of universal chargers. So even though I drive a Tesla, I do have a universal charger at my house. I have a ChargePoint Home Flex, and I actually have a second wall box, so I can do some testing of various chargers. ChargePoint makes a fantastic charger. Wallbox is great. Bosch is good. Flow, I don't have much experience with. And there's lots of fantastic car branded chargers as well. Tesla can charge from universal charges with an adapter. This tiny little adapter, it's about 4 inches long or so. It's included with your car, and you can plug it into any non-Tesla charger. And do try to have your charger installed as close to your charge port as possible. 25 feet is the longest length of a charging cable allowed by the National Electrical Code. We've had some customers say they wanted to put a charger 40, 50 feet away from where they would park, and it's just not going to work. Up to code, it has to be installed a lot closer to that. Next page. So average cost for installing a level 2 charger at home. So this is going to be fun right here, and don't pick at me too much, but looked at 2021, and for every electric vehicle installation that we did in 2021, the average cost was about $3,200 for this level 2 home charger. Now that was not necessarily just for EV charging though. I didn't want to spend that much time to break out the cost of installing the charger itself. That was actually the average cost for every project involved in an electric vehicle, including projects that need 200 amp panel upgrades, underground 200 amp panel upgrades, electrical infrastructure upgrades, just some very large projects for that. So we had the low cost of about $890, including a permit, and the high price was about $19,900 for the EV charger installation. But that included a smart electrical panel, that span panel that you can see off to the side. Gosh, what was that? Just a lot of work, a tremendous amount of infrastructure upgrades to get everything working properly and safely at the house. Now that average cost does include the permit cost, of which the average price that we paid for a permit in 2021 was $260. This does include the cost of EV chargers when we install them. We will often actually include the EV charger with our estimate. So there's $500 to $700 for that cost for the charger, included in that $3,200. Excuse me. And that average price does include, like I said, all infrastructure upgrade costs when needed, whether it's the automatic load management device, the panel upgrade, the smart panel. Some projects can get pretty complicated with this. Make sure we're doing it properly, up to code, and safely. Getting the house ready for, I saw somebody mention pre-installing electric heat pump, water heater circuits. And oftentimes when you're truly doing a home electrification project, which actually customers are asking for these days, you need to have typically more electrical infrastructure in the house to make sure things are being used properly and you're not overloading the electrical system. So that is what we are focusing heavily on these days. Next page. So when you hear $3,200 for that, that does sound like a high amount. It's not a small amount right there, but this is a $3,200, on investment in the environment, your convenience, and lower transportation costs. And if you think about having a public or a private gas station installed in your house, I mean, how much would you pay right now for a private gas? Well, obviously, we like electric vehicles. We don't private gas pumps. But back in the day, how much would you have spent for a private gas pump at your house that would have provided gas at 70% less than you'd pay elsewhere? You would pay, oh gosh, I would pay almost anything for a private gas pump to get me gas at 30% off, or 30% the price of the Chevron up the street. So that's what a home electric vehicle charger will do for you. Next page. And there are rebates and grants to offset costs. Now, unfortunately, this top line, I did not remove that. The federal tax credit is not there right now, but we're crossing our fingers that it will get pushed through Congress one of these days. Only in the last couple of years did they actually have this federal tax credit working live each year when people were installing these chargers. Ironically enough, and this is actually the absolute worst way to do a tax credit, but in, gosh, I want to say like 2015 to 2018 or 2019, they would approve the tax credit the year after for the year before. So they were just giving benefits to people who already installed electric vehicle chargers, which was fantastically helpful, but it certainly did not encourage anybody to install EV chargers at that point. It should be an encouragement, not a post-installation reward for people. So we're hoping that the federal tax credit will return for that. But there are also other local credits and local rebates and grants, like the city of Palo Alto. They do have up to $8,000 per installed EV charger for multifamily dwellings, nonprofits, and schools, and a transformer upgrade of up to $10,000 if you needed to upgrade the transformer to handle EV charging. City of Santa Clara is the other non-PG&E utility in the area, and they offer rebates of $550 to $1,000 for single-family residents. And if you're, again, a school, nonprofit, or multifamily dwelling, they have a $1,000 to $5,000 per installed EV charger credit. Next page. City of Alameda has up to $800 for a EV charger, and various income qualifying residents can get upwards of $2,000 through various programs. And if you check out Electric for All, that link right there, that will show you what other credits there are. Next page. Okay, so here's the fun part. Or a good time to go grab some water right now, the electrical utility rates. This is a thrilling section on very confusing things that change all the time. So listen to me, but by the time you get an electric vehicle in 6 months, things may have changed. PG&E does have time of use rate plans. These encourage utility users to use more energy during off-peak hours when clean energy is more abundant. Like right now, my PG&E off-peak time, or my PG&E peak time, is from 4 to 9 p.m. So between 4 p.m. and 9 p.m., I'm paying more for electricity, and it's up to me to try to not use, to try to use as little power as possible during that time. And then from, I think, 9 to midnight are kind of partial peak hours. And then from 12 to about 3 p.m., 12 midnight to 3 p.m. the next day is off peak hours. And during those off peak hours, that's when you would want to use your EV charger, do your laundry, and do other things. For their electric vehicle rate plan, they do mix it up a little bit more. Now, I hesitate to get too into the weeds with this because it can get confusing, and there are times of days and tiers depending on how much power you're using. But the cheapest rate that we've seen is typically that says 24 cents a kilowatt hour, but it's usually in the 20 to 24 cent per kilowatt hour in there. Jumping to the very bottom, the city of Palo Alto, though, has much better utility rates. So Hiromi, I might complain about the Palo Alto permitting, but your residents are very lucky to be paying such a small amount for electricity. The tier 1 pricing is 14 cents per kilowatt hour, which is about as good as it gets, this side of installing solar for yourself. And the tier 2, if you're using a ton of power out there, bumps it up all the way to 19 cents per kilowatt hour, which is still a fantastically affordable rate for electricity. So if you're in Palo Alto, thank Hiromi for that. Next page. Now, there are options for apartment dwellers. There is a fantastic law in California, AB 2565, where it says that landlords actually must approve a renter's request to install EV chargers in multifamily dwellings. And the request must be made in writing, and the renter must pay for all costs unless the landlord doesn't agree to pay. And I'll ignore the exception for that for now, but the most important thing about these requests is that, now I'm not sure if this is specifically the same bill, but for landlords,
For multifamily dwellings, oh yeah, so the landlords must approve, but I believe it's also like HOAs must approve in installation requests. And that is really important because in certain HOAs, there are some really stringent kind of aesthetic codes that could throw a wrench in electric vehicle installation plans. But if the alternative would be to either have no electric vehicle charging or have the installation cost significantly more if you're not allowed to run a pipe, on the side of your garage to the EV charger location, they are legally required to say yes to that. So you've got the California legislature behind you for getting more affordable EV charging installed at your house. Now, other options for apartment dwellers are some smart outlets in there. It's a company called Plugzio and what is that again? Something Power EV on there. That actually I'm going to be talking with their CEO next week. He reached out again. They have got a 240 volt receptacle in the middle of that, and then two 120 volt receptacles on the side to provide some good fast. Oh, go Power EV, another good company with that. So there are some slower level 1 charging options for apartment dwellers that provide decently fast EV charging. That plug is literally the same plug that I used for the first 10 months. I had my Model 3, and like I said, it worked perfectly adequately. It's not a fantastic solution, but it is a perfectly adequate solution for charging. And these days, if you ran out of juice somewhere, they actually do have mobile charging as well. So they have companies that have mobile battery packs that can come out and fill up your car enough to get to the local V3 or the local level 3 charger. Next page, and I believe this brings it back to Ariane. Take it away.
Thanks, Matt. So just wanted to take a couple of minutes to talk about how Actera is supporting equitable access to EV charging. So as you've just heard from Matt, people who live in single family homes can easily access charging simply by plugging their vehicle into a standard 110 volt outlet located in their garages. But it is more challenging for residents of apartments and condos. So since 2015, the state of California has mandated that 100% of new single-family homes be built EV capable, which is fantastic. However, only 40% of new multifamily homes are required to have some level of EV access. So what this means is that 60% of new apartment residents won't be able to charge at home, where it's the most affordable, safe, and convenient. And Actera strongly believes that that is not equitable. So that is why Actera is helping to lead the EV Charging for All Coalition. It's a diverse coalition of clean transportation advocates, environmental justice organizations, faith communities, apartment and condo residents, and others who are advocating for equitable access to EV charging for all Californians. So we are co-sponsoring a bill, it's called SB 1482, to bring EV charging access to all new apartment and condo units that have parking. We're looking for more supporters. So please, if you are interested in this campaign, fill out this form. The link is on the slide so that we can get you connected to our efforts. There's also something you can do right now, and it won't take long for you to speak up for EV equity. Our bill will be heard a week from today. That's on Monday, May 19th in the California Senate Appropriations Committee. And if it passes, it will move quickly to the Senate floor for a vote. So we ask you to please email your state senator asking them to champion SB 1482. It only takes a minute. You just click on the link that I'll be putting in the chat to send a pre-written email. The email's written for you already. So I'll put that in the chat. And then I'm going to actually hand it back to Matt because in addition to home charging, there is another current option that he's already mentioned for all EV owners, and that is to use public chargers. We're fortunate that in the Bay Area, we have a very strong network of public charging stations. So I'm going to turn the presentation back to Matt to discuss how to locate and use public chargers. Matt.
And before I jump into that, I saw Mark ask, what about existing apartments and condos? Great question. A lot of those locations are trickier to install EV charging in and can unfortunately be quite costly. There are ways to do that. We have installed tons of chargers in buildings like that. It's just a little more complicated. But fantastic news is that starting January 1st of next year, PG is going to have, I think, something like $250 million plus pushed out to help electrify existing buildings like that, with a heavy emphasis on lower income multifamily buildings. So there are going to be some buildings that will get free infrastructure upgrades paid for by PG&E, installed by companies like us. And we are actively looking into how to take advantage of that, because it's going to be great for business and great to help, you know, advance the electric vehicle infrastructure in the area. Cannot wait to help people get amazing charging in their buildings like that. So actually had a friend a couple of years ago. He had liked my Model 3, and he was living in an apartment complex where they had no level 2 charging, no public charging in there, and asked how doable it was to drive an electric vehicle. And it's only gotten a lot more doable since then, but this was probably 3 years ago. And I said, it won't be fantastic for you, but it's doable. And he said, challenge accepted. And he went and got himself a Model 3. And he told me it was challenging at times with all of the needing, you know, going to public charging networks, but he said it was fantastically worth it in the long run. So there are a lot of charging networks, and I think at the time, you know, Electrify America didn't really exist. ChargePoint obviously, you know, has been there, has fantastic charging solutions, has fantastic charging stations everywhere. EVgo is another newer one, but there are charging stations all over the place, and they're really easy to find. Next page. One of the best apps you can have, if you want to take a second, go to your app store and download PlugShare. PlugShare is a kind of charger agnostic app that will help you find your charger. You can see there's the map filter that they have on there. If you're looking for a supercharger or CCS, or Shada mode, J772, Tesla, the Roadster, the NEMA 1450, the wall plug, they will show you every single plug you could possibly find for your car. Again, from a simple 120 volt level 1 wall plug all the way up to the 350 kilowatt Electrify America charging station. It will show you the chargers. It will show you how reliable they are there. I think people can vote for, it looks like Jan Stevenson uses it. Just says PlugShare is awesome. So yeah, please do download it. And I'm pretty sure people can actually kind of vote on how reliable that station is. So you can see if it's, you know, 1 star, 5 star, and use that. Next page. So using public charging networks, I know at this point, it's still a little bit of a wild west with how it's done. You know, many EVs and apps will show nearby compatible chargers. At this point, you should configure your car, your app, your payments options before you really need that first charge. Future tech will allow a Tesla-like public charging options, but not quite yet. And now, for those that don't know, one of the reasons why Tesla supercharging is so fantastic is that, you know, the moment you buy your Tesla, they already have your credit card information. They know who you are. They know what car you're driving. And when you pull up to a Tesla supercharger, all you have to do is open your charge port and plug in the charging cable. There's no screen confirming who you are. You just plug it in and let it go. And that only exists for Tesla today, because they have their own charging networks, their own cars. They own the stack top to bottom. But they will be having this feature in future electric vehicles. I think some chargers actually are starting to be rolled out that have that feature. Now it has to work with the vehicle as well, but eventually it will be significantly simpler. But for now, please look at PlugShare ahead of time, plan your driving trips, make sure you download your ChargePoint app, make sure you download your Blink, all of the public charging apps, get your credit cards loaded in there. I am particularly a fan of the ChargePoint app. One of the best things about it is that they can actually, like with my iPhone, you can use the NFC chip built into it. So I don't have to carry the NFC chip with me. All I do is take my phone. I bring my phone up to, so if the camera was, if you are inside the charger now, I'd bring my phone up, I'd tap it to the screen right there. The ChargePoint app would pop on there, and you would see basically this. There's my ChargePoint app. I would authenticate it, and ChargePoint would bill me. It's a really slick way to do that. About as good as it gets this side of Tesla. Now, charging options oftentimes are either going to be by the hour, where electricity can't be sold like utility, or by kilowatt hour. Now, thankfully in California, they do charge by kilowatt hour, which makes a lot of sense. But if you're driving, across the country, there might be some states where they do charging a little bit differently. And please do note that not all public chargers are made equal. Not all public chargers will work properly. There's a great YouTube video last year from a guy named MKBHD testing the supercharger network for Tesla. And then he had another, I think, Audi electric vehicle, and compared a non-electric, the old style gas car for supercharging. And they did a route back in the New York area, and the Tesla blew the other cars away. The first day, I think the Audi electric vehicle tried using just the built-in navigation in the vehicle, and it failed miserably. It took them to broken superchargers, and they had to backtrack some. It made the day way longer than it had to be. And the next day, I believe they actually used the PlugShare app to find chargers that actually worked. And that day, the non-Tesla electric vehicle almost was as fast as the Tesla, which was super impressive. So please plan ahead. Watch out for that. Next page. Charging compatibility. Now there are, like I said, there's the Tesla charger, and then there's the non-Tesla charger. Tesla is proprietary. It only can charge Teslas, but you can again use that J1772 adapter to charge Tesla from a non-Tesla charger, like ChargePoint. And then for DC fast chargers, they might not work for older electric vehicles. If you get a used Volt or a used Bolt, it might not have the infrastructure built into it to handle the fast charging. But most of the electric vehicles coming up these days have DC fast charging built into them. Next page. So future capabilities, one of the things I'm most excited about is a vehicle to grid charger. That is where your car with your 60 to 130 kilowatt hour battery could actually be used to power your house, and in the future, potentially even push power back to the grid to help supplement and power the grid when there's less power out there. But vehicle to grid is not quite here yet. We have done a tremendous amount of studying into this. It seems like the electric vehicle companies are not entirely on the same page with that. And thankfully through Q-Merit, we're able to have some good conversations with companies like Lucid and Ford and other companies about their vehicle to grid options, and other companies not to be named at this point. But great things are coming. They're just not quite here yet. Nobody really knows how to do it. Well, honestly, they know how to do it. A lot of the issues is actually with the regulatory issues. So if there's anybody on the regulatory committees of these places, get in touch. I'd love to talk and try to get you in the right direction with some of these OEMs to help make this work better. Because I know like Lucid has their vehicle to grid charger working. It's just that there's a lot of different rules and regulations for how this is being done. Now with the vehicle to grid, like Teslas do not offer that option. The upcoming Ford F-150 Lightning offers it. Lucid, oh my gosh, Lucid has the absolute best possible vehicle to grid option. They actually will have enough power to use the in-car inverter to push out up to 100 amps of AC power back to your house. That's, I believe, about 19,200 watts of power back to your house at any given time. But again, they're just having some regulatory issues getting it approved by the various utilities. Some car companies don't like the idea of vehicle to grid because it could compromise battery longevity, but it's going to be such a huge benefit that, not to say I don't really care about battery longevity, I obviously do. I just think the benefits of having vehicle to grid will be incredible. It's going to help everybody. Cannot wait for that. Now, there are some integrations with existing home applications like solar HVAC. I won't get into that too much. It's a little more confusing. But future capabilities are also some faster EV charging in houses. And that would be primarily made with houses. A house is kind of, constrained by physics and electricity. A 50 amp circuit outputting 9.6 kilowatt hours of energy, you're not going to get really faster charging than that. The kilowatt hour is what you're getting to your car. But as cars get more and more efficient, these will be technically faster chargers in the house. As the car is more efficient, 1 gallon of electricity will power your car for further. So good things are coming. Great things are here if you want to get an electric vehicle right now, but even better things are coming. And other fun future capabilities are pickup trucks. Picture on the left is the F-150 Lightning. The review embargo lifted yesterday, and I read a bunch of articles yesterday about the F-150 Lightning and people's experiences, and people are raving about it. Now, you might not like, F-150 vehicles on the road, big burly SUVs and trucks and things like that. And doesn't really matter if you don't like it. There's a lot of America that absolutely loves these things. It's the reason that F-150 Lightning, or the F-150 is the top selling vehicle in America. They're used by contractors and people, and some people just like to have that big vehicle where they can throw their muddy boots in the back and not have to worry about getting their trunk dirty. But people are raving about this F-150 Lightning. It's supposed to be fantastic. It's the Rivian R1T on the upper left, or sorry, the upper right, and the someday will be here, Tesla Cybertruck on the lower right. I actually drove a Rivian R1T a couple weeks ago, and it was amazing. Highly, highly recommended. It was one of the most fun vehicles I've ever driven. So actually, I was talking with Ariane a couple of days ago about the pickup trucks, like F-150 Lightning, and it's my understanding that one of the first deliveries they made for it was actually out in, I think, Kansas or Oklahoma. And she said, why was it there? Why was it in California? And one of the big reasons is that they want to show that this F-150 Lightning and the electric vehicle driving can be for, every Joe Middle America farmer out there. It doesn't have to, that F-150 Lightning does not have to be driven by, a banker in Manhattan or a tech guy in Silicon Valley. It could be used by a farmer in Kansas fantastically with all of the power options on there, and actually almost work better than the gasoline equivalent. So pretty excited to see where that takes us. Next page. Conclusion. Looks like we'll be quick because we're just about there. Electric vehicles are no longer a gimmick. If you're here to try to poke holes in the electric vehicle thesis, it's not really happening anymore. The EVs are fantastic. The benefits are substantial. They cost less. You'll have a better driving experience. It's best for the environment, and the inconveniences are rapidly disappearing. Well, with longer driving ranges in the vehicle, easier charging, better charging networks, and tons of vehicle choices these days. Again, I love my Tesla, but I'm thrilled to see other electric vehicles on the road. There's one moment about a month ago driving down the road where it was my Tesla. In front of me was a Mustang, electric Mustang, and then passing the other way was a R1T from Rivian and an Audi electric vehicle. So 4 electric vehicles. Typically, if there's 4 EVs next to each other, it's all Tesla. But I was thrilled that I was the only Tesla out of 3 totally separate vehicle manufacturers. They're coming and they're here. I think that is just what wraps us up.
Matt, thank you so much. We have run 5 minutes over. And so what I'd like to do now is once again, thank our presenting sponsors, the City of Palo Alto and the City of Sunnyvale. And of course, thank Matt for being our guest speaker tonight. And what we'll do is at this point, that concludes the official program. But Matt is willing to stay on for a few extra minutes to answer anyone's questions that may not have been answered during the presentation. Although if you need to leave, you are welcome to leave, and we'll just have informal Q&A at this point in time. So thank you everyone so much for attending. And Matt, I'm going to hand it back to you. If you would like to scroll through the chat questions, I think there's a couple more there. And also individuals that are still here wanting to stay, feel free now to turn on your microphone, to raise your hand, to ask questions verbally. And during this informal last few minutes, Matt will be willing to answer any remaining questions that you have.
Sounds good. So I see PJ up above said that your main panel is 100 amps. You want to upgrade to 200 amps, but you have underground power. I'm very sorry to hear that. You're not getting 200 amps. It's just not going to happen. You could, but it's going to cost them. If you want to do that, that's going to be you writing a check to PG&E for about $2,000 right now, just for the privilege of getting in line, and maybe PG&E getting back in touch with you in 2 to 4 months to tell you how much more it's going to take to do that. It's going to easily cost you $10,000 to $20,000 for that project, and take 12 to 18 months to get that done. We've had a lot of customers recently who people ask for that all the time, and it's just unfortunately not a fun process. And I hate to break it to you, but you're probably not going to get 200 amps. But that's not all bad. We actually have some fantastic solutions these days. There's that one slide where we showed the Stan Smart Panel. That is not an inexpensive electrical panel, if you will. but it is a fantastic solution for getting really fast electric vehicle charging. And actually, we've fully electrified people's houses before that only have 100 amps going to them, just like your house with underground power. The span panel and other smart electric panels like that will allow you to install a 50 amp electric vehicle charger and a 50 amp induction stovetop and a 40 amp HVAC heat pump system outside and a 30 amp water heater, 30 amp dryer, 40 amp oven. It sounds like I'm massively overloading your electrical system, which would be true with a normal electrical panel, but with a smart panel that has automatic load management, you very rarely will actually be pushing it. But again, I don't really care if that's how it typically will be. I care about the edge cases. And for those edge cases, if truly you were using everything at the same time, you had to charge your car in the middle of the afternoon while you're baking a pizza and drying the towels in the dryer, the smart panels are designed to turn off individual loads as needed. If the load is would be overloading your electrical system. So it allows you to safely have a ton of power, put the potential of more power flowing through your system. So there are some solutions. But yeah, anyways, PJ, get in touch with us if you'd like. We find solutions for that all the time. It's not only bad news for you. There's a lot of really great things that can happen. Jan is asking why CHAdeMO is slated to go away. I don't know. I'm sorry. They do make a lot of adapters these days, so I would be shocked if there wasn't a good CHAdeMO to CCS adapter out there. I know CHAdeMO had what was one of the original DC connectors, and I've heard great things about it. I don't have too much experience with it, but yeah, I'm sorry. And then can I comment on recommended charging practice for a vehicle with a 40-mile charge capacity? Charge it whenever you're at home, plug it in. I don't have as much experience with ensuring that that's going to have the best longevity, but if you only have 40 miles, I assume with a Chevy Volt or plug-in Prius or something like that, I would just keep it plugged in almost all the time. Just always have that battery on there. I think James says the same thing, charge whenever it's convenient. Probably, I think, knows even more than me about that. Battery degradation, not an issue. Moving forward. Health benefits. What do I think about buying a Mini Cooper with 114 miles only? Your daily commute is some 80 miles every day. I would say, ironically enough, one of the most important things with vehicles with less mileage is I would actually say there's even more of an importance to have a fast charger at your house to make sure that truly every morning when you wake up, you've got 90% of that battery charged in there. Now that electric vehicles have 2, 3, I mean, gosh, I've seen some 400 plus miles of driving range. You don't really need to charge every night. So when people are getting 2 of those cars, then they call up asking for a second electric vehicle charger. If we've installed one charger in the past, I typically will tell them, see if you can make one charger work in the meantime. But with your Mini Cooper example, we used to have the Fiat 500e, fantastically fun little car back then. It drove like a little go-kart. And that had a mileage range of about 90. And that was tough. I remember doing walkthroughs up in Atherton, Woodside, San Carlos area, using up about 51% of the battery to get up there and realizing that I used 51%, leaving me 49% to get home. And it was a long drive down El Camino back to my house. Like we said earlier, freeway driving is less efficient. So if you're on the road, on the side streets, with all of the stop and go and braking, you typically will get more regenerative charging of your vehicle. So Tulika, please make sure that you have a good charging option for that so you can charge every night with that. And if you truly only have an 80-mile commute and you've got 114 miles of range on the Cooper, it should work fantastically. Again, just make sure you can charge. If you need a level 2 charger, I would highly recommend it. You might not need that level 2 charger. Just double check. You bought a house with a level 2 charger installed in the garage already. Is there a way to find out if it's permit or not? There certainly is. Most cities actually have online permitting search. So if you wanted to, you can go, search Palo Alto permit search, Sunnyvale permit search. Type in your address, and you can find typically a listing of every permit pulled for that house. How do I find out the amps of an existing level 2 charger? Most chargers will say the amperage on the side of it. They'll say anywhere from 12 to 48 amps, typically for that. Some chargers are adjustable to match the capacity of the existing circuit, yes. But I'm a massive fan of adjustable amperage EV chargers. Permitting process in Cupertino. Thankfully, I'm actually not that involved in the permitting process anymore. We've got full-time employees over here working on permits and drawings and everything, but I've not heard bad things recently. I've heard them complain about other cities. I have not heard too many complaints about Cupertino recently. Okay, and then Mark, you're in a condo with 100 amp underground power. It's even worse. Should you stop dreaming about level 2? Definitely not, because there are even cooler solutions these days for you. There is a company called Wallbox that has a solution called Power Boost. And this Power Boost solution actually tracks the electrical usage of your house, monitors how much power your home is using totally. So actually we've put in, I think, maybe the very first Tesla Power Boost charger nationally for one of the Power Boost teams a couple months back. We've installed dozens of them since then. And we could potentially hook up to a 60 amp charger for you in your house, because 100 amps again is a lot of power. Your 60 amps is less than that. If we were plugging a 60 amp charger into your 100 amp system with everything else in there, with your 30 amp dryer and 40 amp oven and 40 amp air conditioner, zero capacity left, but using a smart load management system in there will let you have a pretty awesome solution. What level do we recommend for level 2 charger? The fastest you can get is typically what I would say. If your house has enough capacity for a 60 amp charger, by all means, don't do a 30 amp charger. Do the max available. But if your house only has enough capacity for a 30 amp charger, don't be sad. 30 amps is more than adequate for 98% of charging. So just make sure you're sizing it properly for your house. You hear that Palo Alto is cumbersome and complicated above 20 amps. That's not true. Palo Alto is cumbersome and complicated above 50 amps. They are legally required to approve, or not legally, but city rule, they will approve up to a 50 amp electric vehicle charger in your house. If you go past that, you go to 60 amps and they look and see that you might need a transformer upgrade. That can complicate things. But you did see her only saying earlier that they do offer, I think, up to $10,000 for a transformer upgrade if that's necessary. But anything above 20 amps that's incorrect. That might have been somebody saying that as soon as we go above 20 amps, we're required to get a permit. If I just put a 120 volt, 20 amp receptacle in for you, forget about the permit. I would not consider the electric vehicle. That's easy. But as soon as you go to 30 amps, you need a permit for that. That's probably what I'm thinking that person is telling you. So I would probably push back a little bit more and ask them really why they think it's cumbersome and complicated. If it's the permitting, find another contractor. We're not the only good contractor in town pulling permits up there. It's not just us. There's other good ones out there. And we're the best, but you will find other good contractors for that. Any recommendation about leasing versus buying an EV given new models, techs, and improvements? No, I don't. I'm sorry, I don't know too much about that. I personally drive my cars longer than I would get with a lease, so I'm a fan of buying the electric vehicle, but I have friends that are all about leasing, so there's definitely pros and cons for each of those, and I am the wrong person to ask for that. Apologize. Add a couple of pictures of the Mach-E and Ionic. That would be fun. I will do that. John McKenna, I see a hand over there.
Yeah, thank you. I just thought it'd be easier to ask you this question than type it up. But thanks, Matt, Shannon, and Ariane for great information. I have a duplex and I live in one unit. I rent out the other. It has no solar. Everything is gas powered. And I want to completely electrify the building and install some EV charging stations and put on solar. So could you help someone like that develop a strategy to do that entire
100%.
Conversion? Okay.
100%. Now, we don't do the solar itself. We used to do solar projects. I've installed, a dozen solar installs myself over the years, but there's a ton of solar contractors out there. And when we started doing electric vehicle charging, there weren't a lot of contractors interested in doing EV charging. So we said, let the others handle the solar and we'll handle the smaller EV chargers. But we do have partners that we could help link you up with for solar. But there are every day is a fun day at work because there's new technology every day. I'm a big tech geek with this stuff. And I'm so excited to see that the technology is finally starting to really influence and really make a big impact in home electrification. yeah, there's some fun things I wish I could talk about right now, but they're coming and they're going to be awesome soon for houses like yours.
Great, thank you.
Matt, I think there's one more question in the chat, and then we're going to let you go. So I've told everybody that if they have additional questions, feel free to contact you. I hope that's okay. And this last question was from
Michael. Can I explain the process for installing a charger in the garage
right.
of a multifamily house for the use of an individual unit? Is Michael on here? Could you add a little color to that? Multifamily house use of an individual unit.
Hi, this is Michael. Yeah, I just live in a condo, and the garage where I park, it's underground, and I don't really have a sense of where the electrical panel would be even located. So I'm asking, I guess, would I need to have a parking spot that's close to kind of the electrical room so that I can install it there close by? Yeah, I don't
ideally,
really. Yeah.
Ideally, for installing a charger in a spot like that, I can tell you again, I'm not trying to scare you or over dwell on the cost of this, but installing private charging in a condo environment like that is on the more costly side. I had a project just accepted from a customer earlier today. The project was just over $6,000 for him, but there's a lot of material. It's in the city of San Jose. The permits there for multifamily are really expensive. We're including the fast level 2 EV charger, hundreds and hundreds of feet of high gauge copper wiring for that. But we do have ways to get charging in there. If you're interested in a lower cost solution, next year with PG&E's heavy push for multifamily charging, there is a chance that you might get some potentially free chargers. Obviously not just for you. You'd be sharing them with your complex, but you might get some charging in the parking lot itself. But initially, now again, that $6,000 project that was accepted from this customer, it is what it is sometimes with how much material and labor costs these days, and wire has risen in cost dramatically recently. I remember freaking out one time recently, seeing how much wire had cost, and I hadn't looked at it in a couple of months, and it's incredible how much more it is today than it was even just a year or two ago. But for public charging, like I said before, the convenience of charging in your own public parking space, it could be worth investigating. We had a customer a couple of years ago. He had a Model S that had free supercharging for life with that. So, and he didn't live too far from a supercharging station. And with his supercharger, or even though he had free charging for life, literally free electricity, free gas, he got tired of sitting at the supercharger, for a couple hours a week. And eventually we put a charger in for him that cost, I think it was ballpark $4,500. And he could not have been happier having home charging, where he wouldn't have to be, living at the supercharger station anymore for as much as he drove. He could just come home after work, plug in, not think about it. The positive mental aspect of that is almost priceless, just not having to think about it anymore. There's so many positive benefits of having home charging that if you own your condo, you're adding to the value of it. So if you think about it in the long run, you're definitely giving like a fantastic infrastructure upgrade that truly does add value for you, adds value for future tenants. Let us know. We'd be happy to take a look at that. I do walkthroughs for those all the time, and we help with installations there. And happy to answer a couple more questions. I know Ariane needs to leave also, but if she wanted to switch hosting over to me.
Oh, sure. One more from Terry, and then I think we need to conclude. And I should give a little pitch for you, Matt. It's relatively easy to get a quote from Willow Glen Electric. He has a nice form that you can fill out on his website. So encourage all of you to use that if you are in that particular stage of exploring EV charging. And so
I just sent a link to that and chat.
Great. Okay, fantastic. And yes, I see Terry slipped in one last question, and then we're going to end the meeting.
Perfect. I kind of pioneered, so just a quick plug for us. Back in 2014, I kind of pioneered the virtual site assessment that a lot of other companies have kind of adopted since then. But I did hundreds of walkthroughs myself and installed hundreds of chargers myself at that time. Realized I don't need to do a personal walkthrough for a lot of these installation locations if I can get a little bit of information from our customer. If they can fill out a short questionnaire, if they can give me their contact information, if they can email me a couple of pictures, and these days with everybody having a smartphone in their pocket, video chats and everything, we can get an amazing wealth of information and use Google Street View to take a look at from the street at the house and satellite imagery above. And we can plan everything remotely. Actually, I have a project manager of mine. He lived right here in the Bay Area that now lives in Austin, Texas. He's lived down there for about a year and a half, and he's still helping get homes electrified around here from Texas. So if you go to evexperts.com/survey, that will get you started with that. Okay, so then Terry, you're hoping to pick up your Kia EV6 next week. Congratulations, that's an awesome looking electric vehicle. I love that it has the bidirectional charging built into that, so you can plug in anything. And probably a fantastic car for camping, and I've read nothing but fantastic things about that. So your new house came with a GE charger that seems to be 30 amps. Do you think we should try it, or do you think we need to upgrade? Oh, definitely try it. 30 amps. If you've got 30 amps there, done. Game over with that. That's more than enough.
Yay. Well, again, thank you, Matt, for staying later to answer all of these questions. You are a wealth of information, and we truly appreciate your participating in these webinars. And thank you all to our attendees for considering an EV in your future and for participating in tonight's event. And so with that, I'm going to end the meeting and wish you all a good night. Take care.
Thanks so much. Thanks, everyone.